and thanks for checking out this latest video forecast from Quebec Weather. This is Forecaster Nate's Kitchens here with you. We have seen tremendous rainfall totals here across portions of Louisiana and Arkansas over the past couple of days. Just a very anomalous event taking shape here. Just quite the pattern we're in right now. We've had this persistent high pressure anchored here over the just offshore of the Carolinas. That's brought in a nice southerly flow around that high pressure throughout this area, and then also we have an upper level low pressure that's been kind of cut off here across parts of Mexico, very slow moving. That has brought in that southerly flow. We've seen this plume of moisture coming in from the East Pacific up through the Gulf of Mexico and then up into the U.S., bringing in all this heavy rain over the past couple of days. Check out these rainfall totals. We have seen totals here over a foot of rain in some areas here. Well, actually, as much as 16 to 18 inches of rain in parts of northern Louisiana, and we're still dealing with heavy rain, so there'll be areas well over 20 inches of rain by the time this event wraps up. We've seen devastating flooding. We've seen fatalities, unfortunately, from the flooding. A lot of road closures, even major interstates, sections of major interstates becoming closed because of this heavy rain. And parts of Louisiana, particularly, just a very devastating event for this area. Taking a look at the current radar, this atmospheric river just continues to keep flowing here. Check out all this rain. You can see the thunderstorms feeding off the Gulf of Mexico. You can see some thunderstorm activity here. And we actually have a little bit of a bowing segment here in central Mississippi. That's a good indication that we're going to see some very gusty winds and perhaps even some damaging winds with those storms. Not out of the question. We do have a marginal threat for severe storms in that area. You can see that ribbon of moisture goes all the way up through the Ohio Valley and up into the Northeast. Just pretty incredible to see that plume of moisture just continuing to come on in across this area. It's been quite the past couple of days. Taking a look at the current alerts across the United States, we do have, obviously, flash flood warnings, flash flood watches, flood warnings, what have you, all across this area. Flooding continues to be a big problem, as we've already had heavy rain, and heavy rain continues to fall across the west. We have some flash flood watches here, parts of north central California. Active weather across the west here over the next several days. And across the east, it's been not as active here. We've enjoyed some record warmth in some areas yesterday. Boston hit 77 degrees on Wednesday. Some areas made it to 80, and we're talking about very mild temperatures continuing. Generally speaking, no major cold air masses here coming in over the next 6-7 days across the east, but we do have some big changes shaping up, it appears, as we hit towards the later part of the month. Really across the whole country, we're going to see some shifts in the pattern, pretty significant changes coming in later on next week, and we'll talk about that here in this video forecast. Okay. So let's take a look at the current, let's take a look at the Storm Prediction Center outlook for today. We do have a marginal threat for some severe weather across parts of southern Texas through Louisiana and Mississippi. I showed you that radar. You saw the bow echo there in central Mississippi. And again, we could see some gusty winds with some of these storms, and it's not out of the question. We could see an isolated spin-up tornado. Not going to be a widespread deal, but not out of question either. So taking a look at the setup here over the next couple of days, we're going to continue to see more rain in these areas. That axis of rain continues to shift a little farther east here as well in some of these areas that haven't had so much rain, but we're still looking at, some areas here in southeast Arkansas, northern Louisiana, 2 to 3, 4 inches of rain additional, and then rain will continue to pile up here to the east as well, across Mississippi, through parts of Alabama as well, and up through Memphis, Tennessee. They've had, as of this posting, as of this video, they've had well over 6 inches of rain over the past couple of days. Their monthly total for the whole month of March is 5 inches of rain. If you watched my video last week, I said Memphis would have the potential to exceed their monthly rain throughout this next week, and sure enough, that's what's happened. We've exceeded it in just a couple days, really, and, well, really, I think in just over 24 hours we exceeded that mark, and we're continuing to see lots of flooding issues throughout the city, and some very heavy rain that continues to fall. Additional couple inches of rain before things settle down later on tonight. So taking a look at the setup here over the next several days off the GFS computer model, you can see that ribbon of moisture just continues to feed in here. But we're going to see that front shifting southward tonight and into tomorrow. We're going to have a high-pressure system over the Great Lakes spreading into the east. So tomorrow, we're going to see a nice day across much of the northeast, looking really nice through the Midwest. Great Lakes looking really nice on Friday with some sunshine across this area. But unfortunately, across the south here, we continue to see that rain. At least the main axis of rain, the heavy rain, will be shifting a little farther eastward towards Mississippi, as you can see here on the setup on Friday. And heading into the weekend, now moisture is going to begin to lift back to the north across the Midwest here. Again, that moisture shifts south Friday, but we're going to see that moisture shifting back to the north. As the area of high pressure shifts to the east, we're going to get a southerly flow that's going to bring in more warm weather and, of course, increasing amounts of moisture as well. So we're going to see a good potential for some scattered showers throughout the week and across much of the Ohio Valley, throughout a good part of the Midwest, and that will spread up into the Great Lakes as we head into our day on Sunday. So Saturday looking like the better of the 2 days across the Great Lakes. It's still fairly mild for this time of year, that's for sure. And across the west, you can clearly see a series of systems here continuing to bring in active weather across this area, especially from central California and points to the north, especially the Pacific Northwest, really going to get a good hit here over the coming days with some heavy snow and heavy rain. And heading into the day on Monday, early next week, here's the good news. As we head throughout the weekend and early next week, look where we're seeing a nice break in the action here. That is a much needed break coming in for the parts of Louisiana and Arkansas early next week. And we're going to see some precipitation, decent precipitation chances here across the northeast. So very unsettled start to the week next week, but very mild as well. Just unseasonably warm temperatures continuing for the east over the coming days. And we're going to see some changes. Here are some changes starting to take shape next week. We're going to see an area of low pressure developing here across the plains heading into the day on Tuesday. According to the GFS, other models are showing this as well. So there's decent agreement here that we're going to have a storm system here. And a pretty potent low, 983 millibar low pressure over southern Minnesota by the time we get to next Tuesday. And that will spread in some rain potentially here and some snow potentially across the upper Midwest. GFS is trying to hint at some snow here. We'll see how that plays out. And we're going to see potential for some moisture returning here as the front moves through across parts of the south, Louisiana, Arkansas. Could see some rain middle of next week. But I'm not expecting anything like we saw, obviously, over the past couple of days. Nothing like that. This will be a fast-moving area of rain. But nevertheless, could still see a little bit more rain towards the middle part of next week. But that shouldn't be an overly big deal. But definitely signs we're going to have some colder air, much colder air, diving into the central part of the country here by the time we get to later on next week. And then that cooler air will eventually kind of make its way towards the east, heading into next weekend and beyond. So let's take a look at the GFS 850 millibar temperatures, just kind of give you a good idea of the kind of air masses we'll be dealing with here over the coming days. Overall, you can see generally mild temperatures continuing across much of the central and eastern part of the country. No major cold invasions throughout this period. This is by the time we get to next Tuesday. There's that strong area of low pressure finally starting to tap into some cold air up in Canada. Going to bring that down towards the middle part of next week, according to the GFS, across the central part of the country. So that cold air begins to kind of load itself back down into the United States here by the middle of next week across the central part of the U.S. And then later on next week, the GFS does have a decent wave of colder air pushing into the east. Other models aren't quite as aggressive. The GFS is really kind of aggressive with this cold air, but the other models certainly favor a trend towards cooler and even cooler than average temperatures across the central and east part of the country by the time we get to next weekend and beyond. You can see some decent cold temperatures on the 850 temperatures here. This would be about 5,000 feet above the surface. Still plenty of cold air available across Canada, so we're going to continue to see that risk for some cooler times looming across the central and east part of the country later on this month. And I don't think we've seen our last snow systems to deal with either. So just keep that in mind. I don't think we're done with that just yet. And taking a look at our temperature anomalies here off the this is the GFS ensemble data here, showing you those very warm temperatures across the east clearly through the middle of next week. But as we head into the later part of next week, good idea here that we're going to have cold air diving into the central part of the U.S. And then eventually notice how that cold air kind of spreads itself closer to the eastern part of the U.S. heading into next weekend and that following week, looking much cooler. In fact, colder than average temperatures trying to show up here on the GFS ensemble data here for much of the following week, heading into the week just prior to Easter. So I don't think we're done. Certainly with some wintry mischief here across the central and east part of the country heading into later on this month. But after all, it's still March. We kind of expect that, don't we? Taking a look at the 8 to 14 day outlook. This goes from March 17th to 23rd. Showing a general idea here why I think it's going to begin to take shape. Where we have the below average temperatures across the Rockies here and into the plains. And that cold air will begin to shift eastward later on in the month. Precipitation wise, I think we're going to see below average below average precipitation here across the Midwest. Still some above average anomalies here across the East. But all in all, it's looking much better next week and beyond across the parts of Louisiana and Arkansas that have seen the tremendous totals. Pattern shifts should bring much needed relief to those areas next week, and really throughout the rest of the month, not looking at a setup quite as anomalous as this one. Well, anyway, that'll wrap it up for this update. I appreciate you checking out our latest forecast. Hope you all have a great rest of your day, and be sure to stay tuned for more updates.